Hi, it's your friends
Okay.
Deborah.
And Norma,
Hi, and we're here to care for the people who care for others. So, as we'd agree, doing that, you could be a teacher, a vet. Obviously, Norma, you deal with who do you deal with? You deal with some of
yeah,
the people in
care
care
managers,
homes, care home managers.
yeah, care homes,
Yeah. And from that point of view, I think even if we're busy parents, we care for others. We could have a team that we manage, and ultimately it can get pretty stressful. And I think I know what it's like. You come home at the end of the day and you're exhausted and you're shattered and you've got to do it all again the next day. So, yeah, we're all about giving you the tools and a friendly voice and somewhere where you know that you've got accessibility to people who know exactly what it's like being somebody who cares for others. And given some time as well, we're going to be coming up with some nice materials, etc., and courses and things, and nice takeaways so that people can really get things that will really help them to uh, to live that life and make sure that you can fit everything in at the same time. Um, which leads me neatly because Norma and I have just been discussing the fact that people are bandying about this word of work-life balance. And I know we've been thinking about it for a few days now, in that it
mm,
actually isn't balance for us. It's more integration. How do we get that whole part of work and life fully integrated? Because I think that everybody now, with everything available on our mobiles, there we are, we're sitting in front of the TV in the evening and we're scrolling through and we're doing all of our emails, etc. So to say it's a work-life balance means that you're going to be either or, and the integration bit is more holistic, isn't it? So Norma, I know that you've been doing a lot about this whole integration piece. Could you explain a little bit about what your thoughts are, and what you think people can do to help themselves with the integration side of stuff?
mm. I think like you say, Deborah, when we um, it as a job, and then like we balance it with something else, so we go and then look after ourselves. As we discussed earlier, it's when you see that person on a tightrope, and there is a fine line between the two. So am I working or am I balancing it with a bit of well-being or whatever? And it becomes another job, another task, another drain. And really, it should all be in one. So as you're working, you're looking after yourself. As you're off, you're looking after yourself. And you can't, sometimes there's job roles that you just can't put things down, and it does need to be integration. You do need to be able to be quite resilient and still giving, but then you still need to give to yourself. So if you have a tough day at work, then integrate a bit of well-being during the day. Take normal breaks, make sure you're eating properly, you've got nutritious food, you get some fresh air, all the normal things that people say about, but see it as part of you as a whole person, because the job you're in is coming from a place of passion and care and service. So when we serve others, that's the highest form of pleasure, really, is to serve somebody else. So we can sometimes give too much, and there's nothing coming back this way. So we need to serve ourselves before giving to others, to keep it topped up, basically, and to have it as one thing. We are a whole being. We're not two sections type of thing. We're not this or that. We are a whole being, and like you say, sphere of being, which is it is a like a inside of one thing, not separate and now on this and now on that. We don't need all them hats on. We can just have one major hat on with "This is me" written on it. This is me, and now I do me. And do you, and not your work, or not this. It's so hard when you really, like, all the time giving, and like you say, you get drained, you come home, you go to work and you're taking your problems, you come home, you can't leave them at the door. But if we're dealing with things, snapshots through the day, even just checking in with yourself and thinking, right, am I okay? Yeah, I'm actually, I'm okay. Or no, actually I'm not. What do I need then? What do I need right now? Do I need a bit of fresh air? Do I need to close my eyes and just breathe? You know, do we need to sing and dance? I don't know, whatever the preference is to people. You know, do the thing that you feel you need, because your body will tell you what you need. You know, your body will say stand up and move, but we just override it all the time by doing instead of being, and we need to come back to being.
You know, that is so important, isn't it? Checking in with yourself and throughout the day, because I know I've sat there and I can literally feel the stress levels rising, and I'm not getting up and I'm not changing my focus, and it's starting to take control. And one of the things that I've been learning about is some breath techniques, which can really recenter what I'm doing and refocus. Because a lot of the time when I'm sitting there, I'm not giving oxygen to my body or my brain. I'm just sitting, it's very shallow breathing. You know, actually look at me and you think, am I actually breathing at all? Because you can't, I don't even feel my lungs going. And this is something that we can do if there's other people around us. It's not going to look weird. But one of the things I've been looking into, it's part of this practicing of becoming meditative, is that they focus on the inside of the nostrils, and when you breathe in, you feel the cool air that you're breathing in through that, around the edges of your nose, around the edges of your nostrils, and you concentrate on that, and then you breathe in, and then you just gently exhale. And one of the things that I've also been looking at is the fact that you think of all the negative stuff and all the stress, and I like to think of it as dark smoke coming out of my mouth, so that you visualize that leaving your mouth and going out of your body. So breathing in clear, lovely, light air, think of it as like a white light, breathing that in, feeling your nostrils with that cool air, and then when you're breathing out through your mouth, concentrate on the fact that you know it's warm, you've got that black smoke, you've got that negativity, you've got that anxiety or that stress coming out of your mouth. And actually do that a few times. And what I've also realized is you can breathe out for a little bit longer than the intake of breath. So breathing out a little bit longer than you breathed in, it can reframe the whole of your mindset. What I found this to be really useful. So if you hear her barking, it's my little dog.
The dogs are trying it. The dogs are trying breathing.
Yeah. In fact, actually, oddly enough, I've got a lovely Dachshund doggy. So when she's on her side, sometimes I put my hand on her tummy, and I can feel her tummy expanding when she's breathing in. And I think we've been told for so long, especially women, hold your tummy in, to get that flat look. Well, that doesn't allow the breathing properly to go into your stomach, does it? As a proper breathing should go and fill up your belly, shouldn't it? Because again, I've done this.
Definitely, make sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna say, definitely. When you breathe in, make sure your stomach is coming out. Make sure your tummy is pushing out, and you're like, ooh, and then breathe. I'm doing it. You can't see it, but you know, and that you can feel it. And sometimes when you breathe out, as you say, breathe out a bit longer. But if you actually put your hands on the bottom of your rib cage and curl your fingers under a bit, that does actually encourage it to go further out as well, for deeper breathing. You know, so, but changing the oxygen, keeping your levels up, and like you say, the best thing you can do it without anyone knowing. So you could do that in any situation, can't you, really? Even on a phone call, nobody will know, will they? As long as it's just like, it don't have to be heavy breathing, do you? It's just controlled breathing.
All these people.
But it's good though, like you say, just we need that oxygen. We do need the oxygen, don't we? Definitely.
And
when you were saying about breathing out, I could see this little vision of trees and grass.
Oh, nice one.
When you were saying about breathing out, I could see a vision of trees and grass. I was like, oh God, that's lovely out there. Save looking at walls. So
well, the other thing is as well, if we can't get out, and this is this thing about the integration of our lives, because I've been the world's worst. I mean, I've had a breakdown about 3 years ago, and it all got on top of me, and I was privileged to have it because now I've broken down and
Yeah.
I can rebuild from a new foundation, and I'm been very fortunate in my time of life to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I was trying to battle with work and with life is this, rather than being, as you always say, I was doing, almost like a validation of my own worth,
Yeah.
is how much could I cram into a day?
Yeah.
And whereas I should have been looking to say, well, look, was there anybody else that you're saying, touch in with somebody? Is there some help that you need? It could be asking a colleague, have you got any time free to do a little bit of X, Y, Z for me? Or I need to pick the kids up. Could somebody swap some time so that we can work it together? And obviously people have managers and people they need to clear it with. But it's like, who do I reach out to at that moment? And sometimes it can be going from within, because weirdly enough, we don't necessarily need to reach out to another person. We can go within ourselves and reach in for that power and support. And I was very mindful that I'm sure lots of people have heard of the phrase the inner child. When I was getting stressed out, what I could have been doing, which I know works incredibly well now, is going within and holding little Deborah's hand, as it were, or it could be little John or whoever it is, and go, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to be all right, you and I. We're going to get through this together. And even just doing that now, I can feel that actually that whole thing with my inner child and that meanness in there is starting to quieten down a bit. It's just like, oh, it's really interesting. You've got a little bit more of a, like, smiley sort of face in there. It's just like, that's interesting. Have you worked on any of that, Norma, with your inner child?
I did do some inner child work a while ago, and it was quite emotional, to be honest, because you don't realize until you sit with yourself and take yourself back to that time. And some of it was because my parents weren't there, because both my parents passed away. They wasn't there to actually explain to me or tell me why this was happening, why that was happening. And it's quite difficult. But what I found as well was that, as like some ways my mum treated me when I was younger, when mum had me at 40, when I was 40, that's when I could understand it more. I could understand the different things and that's when I did this work, and I went back and thought, I could see it from different eyes. And then I could imagine what she said to me. And on one occasion, I actually let her say to me, because I believe in these things, that I let her speak to me and say, this is why, and that's why. But I actually knew, when you go into yourself, we have got the answers in ourselves. We can look outside ourselves for all sorts all our lives, but we have got the answers in ourselves, and the answers will come. But so sometimes it can be difficult, but prepare yourself for it. Give yourself time afterwards to sit with them thoughts and feelings and think, right, okay, that's what it was. And then take that time to let it disperse away from your energy, and know that, it's okay to do that. I mean, to tell me when I was like 6 and 7 that when you'll be 60, this is how you'll be supporting people, helping people, these are things you'd have gone through. Wow, look at what life you're going to have. Telling that person that, and you do come back with that. It's like fixing it. If we're made of Lego, it's like fixing one of the bricks, isn't it? You know what I mean? We feel that one now, move on to something else. And you go back and do another one. And I just found that as I started doing it, I've needed less and less to do it. So there's probably still quite a bit there somewhere that could do with a bit of more work and a bit more time. But at the moment, it's not one of them at this moment. I'm settled where I am, so I don't need to go and picking it. But if something comes up for me and I think, why did he react like that? That was really weird. Then I think, where in my life was it before? You know what I mean? I go back to that place where it was before, and that's when I would pick it up again and sit and do that thought. Because you don't even have to be an inner child. You can be like a young adult, can't you? Could have been something 2 weeks ago that something's made all the difference. But do that. But when you go back to the inner child, because it, like for me, it's a long time ago, that is your foundational block. So that has to have a compound, you know, all them things we learned then are compounded on. So it has to come back to the surface. It has to be changed. And when you change that, you then change like a row of dominoes, everything that affects. So it's like that domino effect, you know, you push one, they all fall down. It's that, but building up again. Yeah. And then looking at anywhere else, is there any energies or anything around that need like shaking off, basically. Get the Taylor Swift moment. Shake it off.
Shake it off.
Yeah, so yeah, Taylor Swift coming in there. Yeah, challenging me in a Taylor. Yeah. Yeah. So but yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, how these deep things can affect us, and also some affect us in a really positive way depending on the situation. But I do believe that them experiences when I was younger taught me the lessons as I grew up, and now I can change them, or sometimes I just look at them and think, yeah, I'll keep you, you know, because a lot of things that, you know, I work better under pressure because I wasn't allowed to do homework, and, you know, I used to do homework on the way to school in the morning, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But when you're a person who wants to learn and wants to do, and you shut down all the time, you know, don't be running, don't do gymnastics, no, you can't go to that club, and all this stuff that you listen to. And I was like, well, I couldn't take myself there without permission. So, you know, and now sometimes I think, oh, I'd like to do that. I think, well, you can do it. They're not here to tell you no. And they were protecting you, because my mum and dad had lost a child. So they were protecting me, you know, and I didn't see that as a child. I just seen them clipping my wings. And, you know, somebody once said to me, don't blame the bird, blame the cage. So it's quite interesting when you look at your parents' experiences. You know, I mean, one of my sisters will say to me, you know, well, I don't know how you can look at it that way. And I think, well, a bit of compassion and looking at the real thing and the time, because 60 years ago when I was born, it was a total different thing. You know, my mum lost a baby at 3. She was 3 years old, baby. And she was told to have another one, you'll get over it. Whereas now we've got, I mean, it's an awful thing for any doctor to say, isn't it? But that was at the time, that was appropriate to that time. It's never appropriate, but it was to that time. And it's, you know, like now there'd be support, there'd be medication, there'd be hormones, there'd be, you know, bereavement counselling, there'd be lots of support, you know, I mean, these days. But she didn't have the privilege of that. So when I was born 10 years later, and then all these things, obviously my mum was trying to protect me because she didn't want to see that happen again. I didn't know about it because I was too young. And when you start unpicking these like balls of knotted wool out, when you actually pull it out, you know, you think, wow, and what life did my mum have, really? Looking at that, you know, trying to put myself in my mum's shoes to look at that, you know, and then you can think, well, actually, yeah, you know, and whether it's a forgiveness or, you know, it was just how it was. You don't have to just accept it. You can explore it and then make it more comfortable for yourself. So things like that. I mean, one lady, I was just smiling there, sorry. The lady I was speaking to the other week, she did some inner child work, and I spoke to her the next day, and she said, oh, it's so emotional. She said, I said, oh, right, she had balloons behind her. And I said, oh, what's going on? She said, I had a birthday yesterday. I said, I didn't know it was your birthday. She said, no, it wasn't. It was for when I was 6. And she didn't have a birthday when she was young. So she'd actually gone back and bought herself a present and a cake, and put these balloons up, and then went back and sat with herself as though she was having this birthday, and gave herself the birthday that she never had. So I thought, oh my God, that's just amazing to be able to do that. I mean, you know, a bit. Yeah, but I thought, well, that's really going back to being a child, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh no, it's great.
But yeah,
it's you know, I'm just thinking about you know, this whole work-life integration. The fact is, it is all part of our lives, and one of the things is we don't just take parts of ourselves into any entity. We've all come home after a bad day at work.
Yeah, that's it.
And we talk about it just the same as our pasts, our childhoods, all of our experiences. We bring that to work with us as well. And what might,
I mean, that inner child sat in your meetings, isn't she?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I was thinking of is, what might be a trigger for me might not be a trigger for somebody else, because they've not had that alignment in their thought about when something happened. And that's another thing which I've been hugely guilty of. I don't even talk about, you know, everything's very open with me because I just like to share. I was very judgmental of people. Really, like, if they say something that I didn't agree with, then I'll be like, oh, I don't like you, or you don't, or whatever. And in that sense, with that narrow-minded approach, I had no idea where they were coming from, what their backgrounds were. They had no idea about my background and what I was bringing in with all the stuff that happened to me. But one of the things I've heard recently is the things that we often are the most vocal against is something that we have yet to work through in ourselves. And I wish I'd have known this when I was battling with everything, because at one point I thought I was carrying around a generational curse. I mean, it's just amazing what I had thought. Now I live a blessed life. I appreciate it. And it's not toxic positivity, because in each and every situation, there's a lesson to be learned. So what I do is I ask what inside, you know, what is the lesson? What can I walk away with that I didn't know before that this could teach me? And it can be pretty bad stuff, you know, and I think, right, okay, what can this teach me? And if then I can look at it without identifying with it so much, without getting all emotional about it. Now, I went off just fairly recently with to a friend's house, and there was an incident outside their house. Somebody took a golf club to somebody's windscreen. Something obviously had happened, and anyway, my friend watched it in exactly the same way. We'd just gone to the car to get the shopping out the car. We were bringing it back into the house while all this was going on. It was the other side of the road. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, somebody's hitting a windscreen. They're obviously not happy. Nobody's getting hurt because there wasn't anybody else around, etc. And I thought, right, okay. And then somebody came out whose house it was literally next to and said, what's going on? And they said, oh, somebody's robbed my grandmother. So it was obviously payback time.
Oh.
So anyway, I went into the house with the shopping and my friend came after me. And when I saw them, they were literally shaking like a leaf. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, you're right. And I said, I'm going to have to sit down. I'm going to have to sit. They were literally like having a panic attack. And I got my glass of water and we sat down and did some deep breathing and everything. They were literally shaking. They couldn't stop shaking. And I'd looked at this and I thought, hang on, there's something a bit more. I've looked at it and I've not identified with it. I know it's not my house, so I don't have that emotional connection with the house, but I like, okay, but my friend had lost it completely, was in shock because of what they'd just seen. And it didn't happen to them, etc. Nobody really saw us. We were just looking on, you know, what have you. And I said, what is it? And they went, I can't cope with this. I can't cope with this. And I said, right. And then we started to talk. And actually, there was something far deeper rooted that had happened that triggered them to go back. And, you know, and I just thought, you know what, when I've been in meetings at work where I've seen and things have gone wrong and it's all under stress and pressure, and I've been the one who's gone to pieces, like my friend, and other people say, pull yourself together, which actually is pretty nonsensical, because when you're like that, there's obviously a reason. You can just pull yourself together.
Yeah, it's the last thing you're going to do. Yeah.
Exactly. And I always wondered, why had I overreacted to what that circumstance was? And it was because I was bringing in lots of stuff into play, and what I judged people on, I didn't know what they'd had, that they would start shouting at me or say something horrible, but you don't know the trigger of what that had triggered for them before, in that sense. So this whole work-life integration, it's more than just compartmentalizing time. For me, it's about understanding life as a whole and how that work part, the bit that you get the money for at the end of the day, how that integrates with everything, because it's all, as you were saying at the beginning, it's all me. It's all to do with me, and it's all about my attitude.
See, the work,
I
mean, the work part, Deborah, can change at any time, can't it? Redundancy, get sacked, leave, grow to another job level, whatever, promotion. There's lots of reasons why that work bit will change. And obviously we work at work, we want, if you want to progress in your career, you're learning the next level up. But when you learn the next level up in a work thing that could change and be out of your hands, the work on yourself, actually on you as a person, that's the bit that then comes out to support that type of thing. And if you're ever in a meeting and imagine everyone around that table as their inner child and just look at it as though these are all 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds sat here today, you don't know then, do you? Know what I mean? And that's where I always think, when you like say people are judgmental, you say, like, you've been there, we've all been there, we do it without thinking.
Yeah.
I suppose it's human nature, but to be able to control it and think about it, I just think, be curious. Why is he like that? Why is she like that? What made them say that? Because that inner child there, they might not have that thought or belief or ability, or actually feel strong enough or brave enough, or even be like out the cupboard enough to say it. You know what I mean? I want to go back and deal with this. So people go, oh, it's stupid nonsense, and put it down all the time. And we live in a society that, a lot of people are believing these things and not saying them, never being the true self, and it's so just be curious. Don't judge, be curious. That's what I'm trying to say, very inarticulately.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not necessarily appropriate to ask questions in a workplace, but again, that whole judgment thing is, it's easy. It has been easy for me to jump into that. And the other thing I would say as well is the power of our words. Once we say something out loud,
Definitely.
we can't get it back. Yeah. And I'm very careful now about what I say and what I think, because again, I don't want people to think, I'm like birds round the window and everything's I know things are serious, but I am serious about the words I use. And I think there's that thing, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP.
Yeah.
The power of the energy, especially if you get angry and you've got an elevated emotion that is a negative emotion, and then you say something in that state, you're putting it out there, aren't you? And it can be very wounding to other people, without sometimes me realizing the implication of what I've said and how I've said it. So now I'm very considered, and again, judging by appearances, there was 2 young lads out. It was a Sunday yesterday, and I walked my little doggy, and she just likes to go and see people and stuff. And so they 2 young lads with what looked like balaclavas on. So here we go. You think, oh, balaclava. And little doggy went over and said hello. And so I thought, oh, grief, I'm going to go over and get her. And people have been giving them a very, very wide berth. And I don't know what they were doing, but I thought, well, I'm going to have to get my dog. So off I walked. I went, yeah, like that. And they went, oh, your dog's friendly. And I went, yeah, I know. Now, whatever those people were up to me, they were very, very, very nice. And I thought, well, I've got to get her back. So there we go. And actually, I don't know what they were up to, didn't ask, but in that instance, they were very nice guys to me and my dog. And I just thought, well, maybe that interaction has maybe helped whatever it was that maybe they were doing. Maybe they weren't doing anything, but ultimately it was one of those things which sometimes having a dog can actually you strike up
it's beneficial
conversations.
It's things like that though, Deborah. It's seeing past the picture, isn't it? So, you know what I mean? When you see something like say, oh God, look at them two, what they're up to. But when you just go and be human with them, then they just be human back. So and sometimes you can change the mindset of somebody. So if they was going to be up to something, then all of a sudden you've broken the mindset and said something nice to them, and the little fluffy dog there and what have you, and then they're like, oh, and it sometimes things like that, like say, it has power, connection, speaking to somebody, words we say, it does have power. And one of the things in NLP. No, sorry, I was just going to say one of the things in NLP is the presupposition that nobody's evil and everyone is coming from a good place. I mean, even people like Hitler, Putin, whoever, in their eyes, they're doing this for the good. So when people are doing bad, things, evil things, they still see it as this is, Hitler wanted blue-eyed, blonde-haired kids, I think, or whatever, people, because he thought that was perfect world. So that's not him coming out being evil in his eyes. That's him trying to make things beautiful and great. But obviously it wasn't it wasn't the right thing, to us. But it's just one of the presuppositions of NLP, and just seeing things like you say, you see somebody holding a brick and by a window, you think they're going to brick the window. Well, they might just be moving it before somebody trips over it. Just we don't know, do we?
You don't know.
Like you say, just be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is as well,
and I think sometimes, well, like when we no, go on.
No, very quickly before I forget my senile brain, or NLP, I should say something different, shouldn't I? My wonderful brain. So I was just thinking, when I saw that, and it just took me back about work, how I have gone in with a preconceived idea as to how something is going to be met, or the person, like, I've already thought in my head, I don't like you. And actually, if only I had, which I do now, is like, oh, well, that's interesting. Why did I feel like that? Trying to ask myself the questions: is it a rational thought? Is it not? You can't just instantly dislike somebody because basically they've not done anything to you. But ultimately, it's just like, what am I judging? Is it my own insecurity being portrayed to me, and I'm trying to step into that and deal with that? And so now I'm thinking, I wish all those times when I was with bosses, if I'd have just been more myself and more normal and more friendly and warm like I am normally, the pay rise probably could have been better handled for me, asking for it, asking for time off, asking for whatever it was that I wanted, or having a discussion could have had a much better outcome if I hadn't projected my own insecurities and thought processes that weren't justified at that time, if you get what my meaning is.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's especially if it's a corporate sort of level, there's an expectation of corporates, and these suits and no emotions and hardworking and all this. It's a very male energy, very, very masculine energy. So to go in as a caring, warm man or woman, basically, I'm not saying, men are not caring, but masculine energy is more, doing that sort of thing. And it's as a feminine energy going into a masculine portrayed, male dominated situation, we do change into that sort of masculine energy ourselves, but then that's where we're coming away from our authentic self. So we then give off. But what you could have seen was somebody else doing the same. You might have actually subconsciously or energetically recognized that person's doing what I'm doing. So now I don't know them. They're not being authentic. You spot it because you're not being authentic. And then, it's a mismatch. And then we don't trust them because they're not the true self. They put a mask on, and we see it because we've got a mask on. And there's situations I've been in before. Where you think something wrong here, and you know what it is really, but we don't consciously think of it because it's an inside work thing again, isn't it? So
absolutely.
It's the being bit.
And I've always had this thing growing up that you don't question authority, and if authority tells you to do something, you do it. And actually,
it's all that control, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've only got there. They're human beings at the end of the day. They're just like you and me, and they've got this position that's more leadership than I would be. But ultimately, that doesn't make them any better or any worse or different. It's just them, isn't it? And
but that's it. Yeah, they're still there to earn the money, go pay the bills. They still got anniversaries, births, deaths, marriages. They're still breathing and shopping. So but then we've got this job to do. So make it part of us and come from a place of service and love and care while you do it, not masculine being something I'm not.
It's very true. We can talk about this authentic version, not the version, the authenticness of us, because you shouldn't have a version, I guess. I don't know what that is. I've said the tautology. But the authenticness of us, we could talk about that maybe, because I have more faces than a Rubik's Cube. A few years ago,
Yeah.
I have no idea. When I had the counselling after the breakdown, and the counsellor had asked me, what do you want to get out of the counselling? And I said, I want to know who I am. Because I was a Deborah at work, I was a Deborah at home, I was a Deborah out socializing, I was the Deborah for myself, I was the worst person to myself ever. I wouldn't have never let anybody treat me like I used to treat myself, you know. It's just like, wow, I was awful to myself, hard and awful. And it was all these different, every situation had a different part of me, everybody that I spoke to had a different part. And it's just like got so exhausting. In fact, I had done, I couldn't cope with it anymore. So actually finding the me, and that will always develop and change, but understanding that I'm all right as I am was a massive relief for me. I mean, it was just massive. So we'd maybe talk about that in another episode if people would like it. But
that'd be an interesting one, that will, Deborah. That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So I'm just
let's
conscious of
do
the time.
that.
Yeah, just conscious of the time. But is there anything else,
thank
Norma,
you.
thinking about this whole business, life, work, family integration? Any more tips that you think would be useful?
I think before, like obviously this is early days, before things, people start going into things, find some guidance for yourself to look at the ways of doing this and ways of, well, acknowledge it first, but then get the ways of how you can do it, get the right support, find the people that you need to acknowledge yourself. If there's something a bit, oh, I wouldn't really know how to do that, just ask them. You can ask us, you can ask somebody else. If we don't know, we can point them to somebody else. But I think for me, if anyone is this on whatever day you're hearing this, for the next 7 days, look yourself in the eyes in a mirror in the morning and say, I love you. And then start your day with that, because that will change everything else you do. That will change everything you do all day. Because you've got to acknowledge you first. And that's the one point that I would start with.
That's a good one. I wish I'd have known that a few years ago, or a number of years ago. But that's lovely.
Not a lot of people can look themselves in their own eyes, so you know it's very uncomfortable to look at yourself in your own eyes.
You're weird. I mean,
looking in the mirror.
Oh,
literally.
I mean, if you're not doing something, you know, like making your face up or shaving or doing something else, you know, it's weird looking in your own eyes to begin with. It's just like,
uncomfortable. Get the uncomfortable comfortable.
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks so much. And you've got my backdrop.
Oh, no, thank you, Deborah.
You know, yeah. Well, I mean, it's good, isn't it? Well, I've really enjoyed this. It's fantastic.
That's all right. Time
flies. And for everybody, we'll get more information. We'll, you know, we can always, if anybody wants to be in touch, you've got my details in the back there. Norma, anybody in touch with you? If you've got an email that people can,
you can get me. Get me through LinkedIn or normasherwin@outlook.com. Our phone number 074 075 12586. Just anyone. I'll come to Deborah and Deborah can point you to me. It's not a problem. She knows where I am. So,
and if anybody wants me,
marvelous. Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah, my mobile's 07.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say my mobile's 07 776 136 330, and give me a call in my mobile. It's absolutely no problem. I don't mind at all. Oh, lovely. Okay, see you soon. Right, take care. Bye now. Bye.